Okay, yeah, welcome everyone to the second installment of the Dependency-Track community meeting. Our last meeting was in mid-November, if I remember correctly. Since then, there has been like Christmas holidays, obviously, so we didn't have another monthly meeting. But yeah, we now have this one in January. From last time, thanks everyone who provided feedback in the little survey we sent afterwards. Some of the feedback was saying that you want a little bit more Q&A time, and there were a little bit too many demos for your taste. So this time there will be more time for Q&A and we're cutting a little bit down on the demo part. So yeah, but please keep the feedback coming. So the agenda is pretty slim. As a result, first I will do some project updates, what we have released so far, what we will release soon, and then also some miscellaneous stuff around that. And then I will pass over to Melba and Caroline from the IBM CISO team, and they will demonstrate to us how they use Dependency-Track at IBM CISO. And then there will be a rather big Q&A section. We will be able to unmute you so you can ask questions to both us and the entire community here. You are much encouraged to also ask maybe other participants, not just us. This is more like an open forum, right? But if you have questions towards us, the project team, please do so as well. So as for the project updates, I already said the last meeting was in mid-November, end of November, and we were close to releasing 4.10 at that time. 4.10 has been released since then, obviously, and we released it on December 8th. And one of the major things in this release was the support for mirroring the NVD via REST API instead of the file-based feeds, because the file-based feeds were supposed to be deprecated by the NVD, so they were going to be removed end of December. So yeah, you can now mirror via the REST API. And there was also added support for c-scrm supplier, manufacturer, and authors fields, which was previously not there. And then a few days later, we released a small bug fix release for the new stuff we brought in. And regarding the NVD stuff, the NVD mirroring announcement, just shortly after we finished the work on this REST API integration, the NVD announced that they will not retire the feeds. So if you have switched to the REST API integration, that's fine. If it works for you, please continue using it. But you can also safely switch back to the file-based feeds if you have problems with the REST API integration. So that also works. As for 4.11, this is the slide from last time. So this is what we have planned to release in 4.11, the next version. I'm just going to read these things out here. It's first the support for the known exploitable vulnerabilities catalog, export for c-scrm SBOMs in multiple specification versions, not just the latest as it is currently. Also the reduction of false positives and CPE matching. We had a few reports for that. And there was also a contribution from the community about a global audit view, which allows you to see the vulnerabilities across all of your projects and not just for one specific project. That's why it's called global. And then also we would love to have the scaling of EPSS scores to the component level in 4.11. What this basically means is that at the moment, EPSS scores are limited to certain vulnerabilities, and then you get multiple scores, one score for each vulnerability, right? But the EPSS specification also allows for scaling up to a higher level. And this would be, you can summarize all the scores for one component, for example, or even for one project, or even for the entire portfolio. So this is what this issue is about. Now, as for how we are right now, first off, we are still planning to include the CAF catalog support. Still, we want to include the multiple specification versions for downloading, but we preponed the CPE matching issues because they were easy to fix, and we had great support from the community for finding issues in it. So this was already delivered in 4.10. We are also still planning on including the global audit views, and we will not include the EPSS scaling in 4.11 just for time reasons, to be completely transparent. But we have additional things that will be in 4.11, most of them because they have been contributed to us by the community, so we could accept them on the fly, so to speak. One of the things is the improvements in processing of uploaded BOMs. If you ever had problems with like BOMs being uploaded and then failing midway and leaving behind like a partial state, like some components have been imported, some have not. If you had like problems with component deduplication or anything along those lines, there will be improvements on that line, on that area. BOM uploads will now be atomic. So either a BOM upload succeeds or it doesn't. There will be no broken state left behind if something fails. And there are multiple other improvements, and they will obviously be listed in the changelog when it is delivered. Also, a great contribution, which is currently being worked on, is the integration of Trivy. So if you have Trivy running in your environment already and you use it as a server, you can also then integrate it with Dependency-Track to use it as an alternative for, let's say, owasp index or sneak. I think this is a very great feature to have. And then we also had multiple requests for tracking the created and last used timestamps for API keys. At the moment, you only see the API key, but not this metadata, which makes key rotation pretty hard, if not impossible to do, because you do not know if keys are actually being used actively. But this will be also delivered in 4.11. Then also a small-ish contribution about assigning default groups to OpenID Connect users. So if you, for some reason, are not able to synchronize team memberships or group memberships with your identity provider, you can now assign a default team so that users who are automatically signed up via OpenID Connect are not left without permissions and cannot do anything on their first login. So that is what this is for. And then we are aiming for a 4.11 release for early to mid-February. I think, so last time we said we wanted to deliver faster and more often. And I think considering the holidays, it is still like in the realm of quite frequent releases. Sorry, speaking is hard. Yeah, so that's from this front. Also for Hades, you may remember from last time, we teased a little bit about the project we're working on, which is effectively Dependency-Track 5.x. We dubbed it Hades or Hades, depending on how you pronounce it. And is for those of you who were not there last time, you can obviously rewatch the recording of that on YouTube. But Hades is just a project to make Dependency-Track scale even more, or scale past what is currently possible, like being able to ingest more projects, being able to scan more, pretty much do all of it what it currently does, but doing more of it and being able to handle more load. We are currently still in the process of making it GA, so there are still a lot of rough edges. And the work on that, we are a little bit behind, to be fully transparent, but we are still obviously trying to make that work. There are no timelines as of now, as of when it will be available. But yeah, we are also building on the new foundation that we have now with this project Hades. We're also building quite a few new features on top of it that we are now able to do. Last time we teased the policy feature, which was based on CEL, so Common Expression Language. For those of you who know like OPA, like Open Policy Agent, CEL is pretty much an alternative to that can be embedded into your application. And we embedded it into Dependency-Track, which means that we can make policy decisions a lot more efficiently, because we don't have to reach out to some external service for every single policy decision. So the one of the features that we now build on top of that again is something that we call vulnerability policies. And vulnerability policies are meant to address the pain of having to suppress or analyze many findings across your entire portfolio, or even across like multiple projects. Other projects have like suppression files where you can select findings or suppress findings based on regular expressions for the vulnerability ID and for maybe the component name. But this is not really, this doesn't really cut it at a larger scale, because you may want to even inspect other like properties of your components or your vulnerabilities, and Dependency-Track has all this information. So it makes sense to surface this to you as a user to make decisions based on that. So we took the policy feature based on the Common Expression Language, and we built a framework around that, so to speak, to let you apply analysis decisions based on rules expressed in the common expression language. And what you see here on the right is just a YAML file. So these policies, you will be able to keep them outside of Dependency-Track, manage them in Git, have like 4ICE principle, like having pull request reviews, etc. And then have Dependency-Track pull that in at regular intervals or via manual like synchronization request. And then Dependency-Track just goes on and applies it wherever necessary. What you see here is an example for an example policy. It has also like validation timeframes, so you can say this policy is only valid until a given point in time, or it is only valid from a given point in time. And then in the conditions, you define your cell expressions, and when all of these expressions return true or match, essentially, then the outcome is applied, and the outcome in this case is an analysis. So if you are familiar with VEX or VDR even, you have an analysis that states like this component is not affected by this vulnerability, or it is affected and it is exploitable. And these things you can also like set in the Dependency-Track UI, right? There was always this audit view in Dependency-Track, and vulnerability policies surface this to you in like a more controllable way, I guess. So all the things that you know from the UI you can set in here. And here we're just saying this is not affected because the code is not reachable with the like justification maybe or the additional details, foobar BAS, and we want to suppress this finding. And this goes even a step beyond that because you can also override ratings. So if the NVD says, hey, this vulnerability is critical, has a CVSS v3 score of so-and-so, but your own assessment resulted in like higher criticality or lower criticality even, vulnerability policies will allow you to overwrite whatever the NVD said based on your own assessment. And just going quickly back to the conditions here, what makes them really powerful is that you can access all the information that Dependency-Track has, which includes like project tags or even like dependency relationships. So you can express quite powerful policies that extend even beyond what VEX would allow you. And I'm saying this because VEX does not have conditions, right? VEX is just a statement. You apply it to an analysis of a product, but it doesn't allow you to specify conditions like vulnerability policies do. Also to clarify before the question comes up, this is not a replacement for VEX. This is not a replacement for VDR. There are use cases for all of these things, and vulnerability policies are really meant for like applying something in a broader way and in an efficient way, because this can be enforced by Dependency-Track during vulnerability analysis. There's no additional files that need to be pulled in or anything. Having said all these things, there's not a demo of this planned, but if at the end of the Q&A we still have time, I'm more than happy to demonstrate if anyone is interested. A lot of talking. So also Dependency-Track won the SANS Difference Makers Award, which was very surprising and very pleasing, I guess. And it was in the category Open Source Tool of the Year, and it was in the community voting. So everyone who voted for us, thank you so much. The award also made it to Steve in whole. Maybe Steve, if you are here, maybe if you want to say a word or two.
No,
Sorry
this
for putting you on the spot.
it was an honor to be nominated, and it was very humbling that the community came out and voted for this tool, right? To me anyway, it kind of signified that SBOM has in fact arrived. Maybe 10 years after Dependency-Track, became a thing, but the fact that an SBOM tool won the Open Source Tool of the Year from SANS it's amazing. So thank you to the community for supporting the project, and more importantly for supporting all the maintainers that make this possible.
Yep, thank you, and thank you, Steve, for these words. All right, moving on. I just want to make some advertisements for upcoming presentations. We have Saiba and Meha from our team who will present at the Open UK conference on February 7th about Hyades mostly, so the project we've been working on. They have played a very large role in this project being developed and being where it is right now. So if you are in London and you can make it to this conference, please go to this talk. It will be very much worth your time. And then also a little bit more boring talk from my side. I will talk at the OWASP Netherlands chapter, and I'm not saying it's boring because of the OWASP Netherlands chapter. I'm saying it's just like a flagship project spotlight, where I give a demo or an introduction to Dependency-Track. So if you are new to Dependency-Track, this will be a talk that you most certainly will enjoy. And this will be on February 15th. Sorry. We will, of course, share the slides after this meeting, so you will be able to click the links if you want, or scan the QR codes now. With that out of the way, I'm going to pass on to Melba and Caroline to tell us something about how IBM CISO uses Dependency-Track. Please let me know if I should advance these slides.
This one's fine for now. Thank you, Nicholas. And my name's Melba Lopez. I am a senior technical staff member for IBM CISO office. And my responsibility is the supply chain security strategy and implementation. And with me today is Caroline Lee, along with Nicholas Castelli. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll go. So hi everyone, I'm Caroline Lee. I'm a security engineer also in the office of the CISO on the remediation team, and my role on this team and internally has on this work has been to be a developer in the internal tools and help contribute back to Dependency-Track as well.
Hi all, I'm Nicholas Castelli. Similar to Caroline, I'm working with her on the remediation team in the office of the CISO with IBM. And with Dependency-Track as a developer to kind of help push the open source.
Thanks. Gus, can you advance this slide? So we wanted to take a few minutes to just explain the why, right? Why we're using Dependency-Track, why it's so important for IBM. And if you look at the SBOM analysis trend, this is from IBM's perspective of what we've been doing every half since the second half of 2022. The amount of growth that we've seen in the amount of SBOMs that we've had to analyze has increased by 2,327% year over year. That is an insane amount, and it's not scalable for a human to do. So because of that, we started adopting Dependency-Track early on in the first half of 2022, trying to understand how we can leverage it and do some sort of automation around it to help us with the assessments. And what we're assessing today is anything from third-party security risk management assessments. That means our suppliers, our vendors, our OEMs, right? Anything that we're trying to purchase. Mergers and acquisitions, right? So last year we've done 9 acquisitions at IBM. We actually use SBOMs as an analysis to figure out what are we buying as IBM? What risk are we obtaining by purchasing this product, right? And how much remediation do we have to do before we can, sell it? IBM product security is definitely a use case, right? Customers are constantly asking for, what's the latest in IBM's security policy or, SBOMs, et cetera. So this is also something we use Dependency-Track for. And then obviously open source security, what's in this open source package, right? Can we truly trust this package? And so, like I mentioned, it's had an increasingly amount of focus in IBM. And so this is a strategic tool currently, because without it, we would not be able to scale with the amount of SBOM assessments that we're having to do. And it's allowed us with automation that Caroline is going to talk about to have a 95% reduction in assessment time. That's significant, right? That's potentially a full head count or more, right? Also, it's helped us increase the awareness of third-party cyber hygiene. If a supplier or vendor or an acquisition says, hey, yeah, we're SOC 2 compliant and we're doing all the scanning, and then we see, hey, your product has like packages from 2005 that are end of support, end of life, that's a big deal, right? So what they're saying and what they're actually doing are two different things. So by leveraging this automation and Dependency-Track, we're able to see truly what the cyber hygiene stance is. So I'll pass it on to Caroline to talk about what we're doing in IBM CISO.
Great, thanks, Melba. And that was the first time seeing your slide, seeing an over 2,000 increase in SBOM assessment. That is a big deal. Could you go on to the next slide, Nicholas? Great, thank you. So from my perspective, I've been working on this effort for about 1.5 years now, and with Melba's higher level view, they're able to see how many assessments need to be done. They're making the conversations to assess these SBOMs. And I and Nick were brought on to help build the automation. So we're working with the analysts to determine what the bottleneck points are and to determine what points can we automate to make their analysis process smoother. So one thing they needed to understand was, we have this SBOM, how do we make the best use of it? So they want to know, what are all the components that are in the product? Are they all up to date? What are the vulnerabilities found in these components? So we can start a conversation from the result of this analysis. So I worked with them, and we started small with a small Python script to extract the data that we got from Dependency-Track from the SBOMs that they would upload to Dependency-Track. So growing small, we made a report that first summarized all of the critical information that they needed, and eventually added more and more details with first all the vulnerabilities, then a separate tab for criticals and highs, details such as that for what the analyst needed. So next, I will talk a little bit more about the technical details involved in this script in the next slide. Okay, great. So the automation that we built. So far, this is what it looks like. It has grown over time, and it probably will grow more. We have a lot of ideas on what we'd like to see this script that we're using internally on our teams. So the analysts grab this SBOM, they have this SBOM, and they upload it to Dependency-Track. So within Dependency-Track itself, it has a lot of details, and they're able to see a lot of information, but they want a simple way to copy and take that information and present it to the stakeholder. So they needed help in that, and so we have this Python script to grab the total component information and vulnerability information that they need. We also developed the capability that also grabs information from our internal vulnerability database that has the results of all other vulnerability scanners and compares it against the vulnerabilities coming from Dependency-Track. And so this is just an extra check to determine if there was any delta in the vulnerability, and to be able to have that in the report that they create. So this script generates an Excel sheet of all the information they need, and then they then complete the report. And I think they reformat it into PDF with some more graphics. And then they use that information to have that conversation. And so this whole process, just for context, they had been doing manually. And so for a rather small SBOM, it could take upwards of 30 minutes. And so the script that we helped create, it helps make that time into less than a minute to gather all of the information that they needed. So this was a huge win. And because we were able to get the results so quickly for them, it sparked their creative minds, and now they have lots of ideas of what to implement for the future of our script. And so all of this is done because of the great tool that is Dependency-Track and all of the contributors involved in Dependency-Track 2. So next we're going to talk about the contributions to Dependency-Track with Nick. So I'm going to pass it over to him. I think that'll be the next slide.
Right. Hi, all. So just to kind of back up what Caroline was saying, contributing to the Dependency-Track, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we want to contribute back to them. So, you know, we kind of want to have a call to action to everyone on this call. If anyone's interested in helping contribute, you know, open source is, you know, the baseline of it is people contribute, you know, on their own time or through a company. But, you know, there's a lot of great reasons to contribute, right? Whether personal growth or, you know, the only barrier to entry is what you want and are able to contribute. You know, we also get to work with a lot of people in the supply chain security platform scene and have mentorship and learning opportunities with, you know, everyone we work with. Yeah, at the end of the day, we want to make the platform better, you know, so to speak. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that's something we're proud to do as contributors of Dependency-Track. So definitely, if it's something you're interested in, any of the community meetings, you know, or in the Slack channel, feel free to drop a line. Thank you.
That's it, Nicholas. So thanks all. We're definitely we can answer questions offline if there's times during the Q&A. Actually, is it Q&A next?
It is Q&A next,
oh,
yes.
There it is. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me. Okay, so we need to unmute folks. So give us a second. Let me. If you want to ask a question, I'm trying to unmute folks. If you want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. So maybe I can unmute you first.
So there is a question from Niranjan. Maybe he can repeat, or if
here, let me see. From I don't think I see that question.
I think he raised a hand. Maybe I will unmute him and
Yes, please.
Niranjan, please go ahead.
Niranj? Is it Niranjan? Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hey, I was wondering, is there a way that, let's say we upload the SBOM list into the dependency track, right? Now, one of the big questions that I have is more interested in finding out is there a packages that are already being flagged as malicious or flags that are already flagged as malware packages, right? Is that present in my environment? That's the first question I'm more interested in. Let's say I'm exploring SBOM as an option, right? Is there a way that Dependency-Track can easily pinpoint to this?
Maybe I can try to answer that, Nicholas and Steve. Feel free to add or correct. So there are multiple ways. One is a non-malicious package, like or a backdoor or things like that.
Okay.
You can set a policy with the package or component hash or identity what you have, then you can highlight in that way, so you can potentially detect those particular malicious package. And there is another way is that unknown malicious package or something potentially malicious package, right? And you may not have information about these packages. So that's something. There is a similar feature available in Hades project. We call it integrity analysis. What it does is it compare your package hash, the component package hash in the SBOM with the original, authoritative hash source. And if it will see if it is matching the hash or if it is compromised or if it is changed. And you can potentially find if there is a compromised package or hash there. So
Okay.
it's a good explanation, Nicholas or Steve. I don't know if you want to add or correct something.
The explanation was good. I just want to add that there's also like Dependency-Track supports OSV, and OSV has I think for a while now, supported malicious packages as well, and they are just distributed as normal like vulnerability records. So if you have OSV enabled, most likely, especially for the NPM ecosystem, you already have like known malicious package information in Dependency-Track. It's just it will be flagged as vulnerability and not explicitly as malicious.
That makes more sense. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
That's also remind me, there is another source like Snake. They also create a vulnerability entry for a malicious package as well. So if you integrate with Snake, you can also see known as well. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for this detailed info. Thank you. That's really helps.
I think before Nico, there was Marlon. Marlon, did you want to come off mute?
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask if you consider the licenses on your analysis, and how do you deal with false positives for both vulnerabilities and for maybe lack of information on licenses as well?
Yeah, so we have an open source security team that deals specifically with licenses. So depending on the use case, if it's an acquisition, if it's a supplier, et cetera, they do that analysis and they do use Dependency-Track. But Dependency-Track, for the most part, is used for the vulnerability assessment. The licensing sometimes is missing from the open source packages in terms of their claims. So we have special tooling to be able to identify more licenses. And we actually did not deploy. Matt Rakowski helped me with the word. We donated, there you go. We donated that to OWASP. There's a license scanner tool that has helped us with open source clearance. So I can put a link to that. In terms of false positives, right, we can't prevent that necessarily. It's always going to depend on that project, how it's using that package, how it actually got detected. If it was declared in some old pod.xml, right, or a requirements.txt file that was lingering and they just forgot to clean it up, right? So we can't ever remove false positives necessarily or get away from it, but we do have things in place to try to reduce those in our analysis. Did that answer your question? Okay, I think Nico is next. Did you want to come off mute? So Nico's question was, I've noticed that a repository for Helm charts has been created. What are the plans in regards of Helm charts? Is there any timeline?
I can say something to that because I created that repository. So we had lots of requests for an official Helm chart, and we saw these requests, but we never got to it. So now, yes, a repository has been created, and yes, we are planning to populate it with actual charts. It's just a matter of like moving the charts we already have, be it internally or by other contributors, and moving them into that repository. There's also an open GitHub issue for this, where I just yesterday asked for a wish list for like, if there was an official chart, what do you as a consumer, what do you wish there was in that chart? Because we all know there are like certain customizations that companies like to do, be it sidecars, annotations, all of these fancy things that you can do in Kubernetes. All of them eventually need to be supported by the Helm chart as well. I'm happy to share is there a chat here? I think so, right? Yeah, I will share the link to that issue, and you can add your wish list points, I guess. But there's no timeline, just soon. Sorry.
And Niranjan, your hand is still raised. Do you have another question? Oh. Are there any other questions? Okay, thanks. And then Marlon had a comment. It would be nice to integrate it into the SBOM generator tools or an additional tool to enrich it with that information. I'm not sure which tools. Could you clarify, Marlon, on what tools you were looking for? Oh, I think somebody was trying to come off mute. Is it Sushmita? Did you have a question?
Oh, yes, it's a kind of a different kind of question is that my team uses Nessus. And I believe the Dependency-Track is a similar kind of tool, except of course it's open source and it's free. So if I had to present on, Nessus versus Dependency-Track, what would be the best way to do it?
I mean, I'll go first because I've used Nessus plenty of times, right? Nessus is a scanner, right? Dependency-Track isn't necessarily a scanner. It integrates into Scanner, so you can have integration points to Nessus to collect that information, but they're not necessarily one and the same, right? But Matt, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, Marlon was asking, I think, about the license scanner. So both the license scanner and the SBOM utility, which now has about 8 functions to it, are designed as any good Go. It has an application that you can run it standalone, but it's designed to be an import library, so you can actually import it. So if you have a Go program, you can import it, and there may be some way to import that to other language tools. I know Java and Go, some that I've heard can somehow, I know Go can import Java. I'm not sure if it goes the other way, but in any event, that's why it was designed as a library.
So does anybody want to follow up with the Nessus versus DT comment?
I think they are just mostly different tools, right? Nessus is more like general purpose vulnerability scanner, and DT is meant for analyzing SBOMs. I'm not sure, probably by now you can generate SBOMs with Nessus, I'm not sure. But yeah, there's really not much overlap.
Is it Nexus IQ or Nessus vulnerability scanner, the network, which?
I think it's Tenable.
Yeah, Tenable, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just a vulnerability source, right? So Dependency-Track is able to integrate into NVD. I believe there's a SNCC integration. Is that right?
Yeah.
I can't remember the other ones. OSB is one, GitHub advisories, right? So it's more than just Nessus. You can integrate Nessus to DT with some automation on your part, I'm sure. And if you want to contribute that back to the community, that'd be fantastic. But it's not really the same. If you have other questions about that, feel free to ask. Dylan says, I am looking to start generating reports metrics based on overall security posture for all projects being scanned into DT. Are there any references or examples of others doing something similar? Panelists?
I think there are multiple options, so you can either integrate with tools like Nicholas, please fill me. IBM, what was the tool? Integrate with the Dependency-Track database.
Oh, you mean business intelligence tools like Cognos and Apache Superset, maybe? Yeah.
You can use Cognos or other tool set with the Dependency-Track database and generate it, or also you can integrate Dependency-Track with other downstream consolidation tools or a generation tool, then generate the report. I think Nicholas, you had some plans to query filter for the I don't know, reporting engine kind of thing. I don't know what is the current situation with that. Yeah.
Putting you on the spot. Yeah, there are no further improvements on that part from the Dependency-Track side, I guess. We have some broad ideas as to how we can make reporting better, like making the dashboard even better and allowing you to drill down on certain things. But your question is also kind of broad. Maybe you can concretize a little bit more what you're looking for. There are metrics endpoints in the REST API that you can use. So you could theoretically go through, you can request the metrics for the entire portfolio, but you can also do it for individual projects and then mix and match as you please. I know there are people who do that, like who fetch the metrics for multiple projects. and then just use Python to generate a CSV, or I think there are tools that let you generate graphs also based on this data. There's really lots of options, and really depends on what you want to do. Sorry for the broad answer.
I think
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Matt hands is raised. Is it Matt? No?
That was legacy, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Another question from Marlon. IBM, you mentioned that you have other analyzers. Is there any other analyzer you think should be integrated with DT? Yes. But we don't have all the time in the world and all the developers, right? So that's the thing with Caroline, Nicholas, and myself, right? Open source is not our day job, right? We use open source to help us with our day job. And so as much as we would love to develop all sorts of cool stuff, we don't have the time. I would love to see Mend, right? That's an open source scanner that we use. I think Trivy is another one that's coming up, right? So there's all sorts of scanners that we could use integration points for, and that would be fantastic. Right now, we kind of have scripts and automation to work around that because we just don't have the team. We're trying to build up that team internally to help with development and to contribute back to the community, because DT is so important to us. Next question is, how do you handle vulnerabilities with multiple IDs from different sources describing all the same problem?
Maybe I can take a first. Yeah, so it is a problem when you have like multiple analyzers and sources which reporting same vulnerabilities. It may sometimes looks like noise or duplication. I think we initially had some plans to deduplicate and consolidate based on alias, but it seems like it seems like the alias data from these sources are not reliable as we thought initially. So then we didn't make that much progress to that direction. And there is a potential possibility to do this in Hades with the vulnerability policy, what Nicholas mentioned in the beginning. There is an issue which I created recently to extend that policy to support this use case where you can have confirm or reject a vulnerability based on the number of sources it is reporting. So that could be an options to deal with this problem. I don't know if Nicholas, you want to add anything else, or anyone else from the panel? Yeah.
Just adding to what you already said, basically. So the alias information that we get from sources is not that reliable because the lines between is the same and is related is very blurry for some of those sources. So doing actual deduplication based on that is quite hard to do and very hard to predict. But what we already do is we tell you what the source has reported, right? There's already a link in the UI, for example, that tells you, hey, the source said this is CVE something. So we have this information already, but it is not reliable enough to do actual deduplication based on that. And I think if we develop this feature further, what we really want to do is making it more transparent, like which source reported what, when it was reporting it, and also when they correct these relationships, also like make this transparent. But at the moment, aliases are just a huge train wreck as a topic itself.
So I know Marlon had his hand up. Do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, so the reason why I asked if you had other analyzers is that I'm trying to contribute a little bit to the project as well, with the support from my company as well, because we also think that we should all contribute when we use open source tool. And since we were also doing that with commercial tools as well, it's better that we do it for open source. So if there is a list that we can have a look and also learn from the experience as well, please share it. That's it.
Absolutely. But I'll write that as a to-do for us to maybe share a list somewhere. Thank you, Marlon. And then Vinod, was that link that you posted a response to Andres?
Yeah, it's related to that, like how you can address this issue with the the vulnerability policy and how you can use the vulnerability attribution to implement such a policy. Yeah.
And for folks on the phone that can't see, Andres had asked, I have noticed that Dependency-Track is not displaying the link of the patches solution of a CVE in a nice formatted section, just as references links. Would it be possible to implement in the future? And so Vinod put a link in the chat that actually addresses that,
Sorry,
that question.
I misunderstood that, Melba. So I posted
Oh.
it for the previous question, not necessarily.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So then
it's the timing. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So does anybody want to answer Andres's question?
I'm just wondering which source provides patch information. I think the NVD does not. They just tell you which range is affected, but they don't explicitly tell you which version you should patch to. I think Sneak provides this information.
Yes, Sneak does. I think OS Sneak does, but yeah.
NVD has a patch tag, for example. Okay, I was not aware of that. So, okay, is this a separate field? Maybe if you want to see this, maybe raise an issue in GitHub. That would be best, so we can look into it. Yeah, with my current knowledge, I don't know where they provide this.
Yeah, but just want to add, like a Dependency-Track already support the latest version check from the actual package repository. So technically, if there is a newer version available, Dependency-Track can highlight that as well. Like so.
Yep.
John mentions that MEN typically provides a recommended fix as well. In most cases, they indicate which version to upgrade to for the fix.
Yeah, but in reality, it may not be that easy to upgrade all the vulnerability with the dirty patching. So sometimes you may want to upgrade your parent library or a direct dependency instead of patching the transitive dependency. So it's a complicated problem. So that yeah.
Yeah, I think this was in reference to putting it into DT as a
Yeah.
Like documenting it.
Yeah.
And Val, you have your hand raised. Do you want to come off mute? Oh, I think I muted you by accident.
Let's try again.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me, guys? Yeah, cool. I have a couple of questions. The first one is related to EPSS. The nature of EPSS is dynamic, right? So when I submit an SBOM, I get a current value, but then I stop submitting any other SBOM for that repository. But in the meantime, the EPSS may have changed. So the question is whether or not it's possible to introduce kind of delta that helps me to understand that maybe I should pay attention to this vulnerability because it's getting some attention from the attackers. That is the first question. The second one is that often I notice that when there is a latest recommended version for a component, maybe this version is jumping to a way bigger nature, and that may introduce backward breaking changes. And I wonder if it was possible to have two latest version, one that is respecting the same var of that component, and maybe another one that is the latest. So when I update, I get the recommendation. I don't take the risk to just jump into the latest, risking breaking changes.
Should we go ahead and answer now the first two questions? So your first one was about EPSS, right? And the history of how it changes. Yes, that is something that we should add. It is currently not in Dependency-Track, but we also made like a small study on the historic EPSS data. And not only does do the numbers change over time, but also sometimes they are removed completely, or they change from 0.1 to 9 to 0.9. So there are huge jumps also. And in doing this analysis, we also determined, like I think Steve, you also were part of, at least partly part of this. We determined that we need something like this, what you're saying. Yes, so there should be a historic trend, and that should point out when huge jumps are happening, or when like issues, when vulnerabilities get kicked off of the EPSS list entirely. Yes. I'm not sure if this answers your question. Seems like it. Yes. Okay, and then for your second question, so having more than just the latest version, yes, that is also something I think we should do, at least for like a few major versions. But there has to be a limit as to how many versions we fetch, because this will be a lot of data. If you have a lot of components, this will be a lot of data. And so we need to be somehow smart about this. We cannot just download the entirety of Maven Central, for example. Yeah, but I agree it should be there, yes. I think you said you had 3 questions, but I may have misheard. Or if anyone else from the team wants to add something.
I think Val says thanks, okay. So Sashmita had a question, is there a video of how to generate SBOM for a program end to end? And I'm gonna say it depends on the product, on what it is that you're trying to do. From IBM's perspective, right, we have 1,800 products. Some are hardware based, some are container based, some are on-prem, some are SaaS, and then you have open source, and you have people doing things differently in terms of languages, in terms of what repos are using, and there's no one way to generate an SBOM, right? So that's just Melva's point of view, because that's my reality, but I'm welcome for other folks to chime in here.
I think Marlon posted, I mean, CDX Gen, but yeah, it's more like a generic purpose SBOM generator. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but yeah, it can support multiple technology stacks. If you are interested, you can check that. But we also have specific CycloneDX plugin, build plugin. So if you are, if you want to integrate with your particular programming language. And Matt, I think you have raised your hand.
Yeah, it's a new hand.
Yeah, sorry.
So I mean, this is education that we need to always propagate, is that there's not one SBOM. And actually I'm trying to stop using SBOM. Okay. There are bombs that are produced at different stages of the build process. So there's this is reinforced by new things that have come out in Cyclone. You have the traditional SBOM with built from source code inspection of repositories. And then you have what we call the manufacturing BOM, which is new at 1.5. So it captures the manufacturing process, what tools and that were used to build the software that needs to be captured. So so these each can produce different BOMs, and my opinion is that we should not attempt to aggregate them, but somehow link them together. You pick a master, and you link the rest with it. And then you have things like, going forward, the machine learning BOM using CycloneDX semantics, sometimes called an AI BOM by people to get more interest, more hits, AI BOM. And then we have other BOMs coming with a c-bomb, cryptographic BOM, which describes specifically your quantum safe information, for specifically security information about your software. So just CycloneDX itself, there's about 6 or 7 different BOM types, perhaps each generated by different tools at different points in the CI/CD process. And there's like I said, a lot of the BOMs you get from containers, they're artifact BOMs, so you don't have the source code. So they're building for what's ever built into the layers of the container image. So, you know, have to, so, but all those bombs should be captured and related to a given point release, a given CI build, in my opinion. Anyway, that's it.
So yeah, I think Marlon mentioned he would like to hear some experience on SBOM merge, and I mentioned that could be a whole hour topic on its own.
So I mean, I had a lot of time to think over the past few months. Some of you may know why, and others may not. But I thought a lot merge because it's a function I looked at years ago, and because I knew that we had many bombs, and this goes back to, you know, my conclusion. We probably merge is probably not the best strategy, because, you know, looking at different tools, there's a lot of proprietary data and data that would get thrown away, or we make a mistake with a merge. There's merge concepts of, you know, you have to have deep copy, deep equals to make sure it's truly before you throw something away. So I will say that I'm asked by utility. What I did was enable something called patch. So, you know, we want to be able to perhaps edit bombs or trim bombs, trim data out for analysis purposes. And that's why I created trim for dependency track. So we get this, my demo showed we had 120 megabyte SBOM we got from us. I believe it was a Sonotype tool even. And we trimmed it down to like 24 megabytes, 25 megabytes. So it could be imported into dependency track because that was all just properties. We just trimmed proprietary properties, but no identities, hashes, anything that we care, vulnerabilities, none of that was trimmed out. Just these properties that were only meaningful to Sonotype's database, basically. So, you know, I think that the thing is we want to basically use, you know, we have signage on SBOMs that we want to be able to edit them and resign them. Those are the key tools along the way, you know, be able to bump the version number, regenerate the serial number in the SBOM and those type of things, or add to the serial number to make, and then add bomb links to link them together. So anyway.
So I accidentally skipped the question. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Jorg. Does an EPSS history really help? I prefer to act at the actual value. Trying to find a trend might be like predicting stock prices.
That is completely right. I think the topic was not about trying to predict anything, because that is literally what EPSS is trying to do. It's more like having the historic trend so you can see when something changes. You will still be able, I figure you will still be able to see the current value and make your decision based on that if you want to. But the historic trend should be there for your information if you need it.
So we have 1 minute left. So I'm just letting the panelists know that.
Can I maybe just add something to the emerging discussion? I agree with Matt, definitely. But I also think it heavily depends on your use case. And if your use case is only like bringing basic component information into dependency track, then you can like write a merging algorithm fairly quickly, or fairly without much complexity. But if your goal is to have like a universal bomb merging tool, then of course there's much more to be considered. But if you know your use case, it's totally fine to like build a merger based on your requirements. Just be aware that you may be losing information. Yep.
So we are at time. Just want to thank everyone for joining and participating in our second community meeting. I know there might be some questions that are still left pending. Please fill out the survey once you exit. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us on Slack, right? We are there. And if you don't know where the Slack community is, email me at melba.lopez@ibm.com and I will give you the Slack link. Thanks, folks.
Thanks all.